Welcome to another installment of West Virginia Smoking, Grilling, and Outdoors. Today we're going to be canning some ramps. So I'm going to go over step by step what we got to do, getting them from the woods, getting them cleaned up, getting them rinsed, and then getting the canning process started. So stay tuned. Okay, basically all you have to do is prepare a ramp. Get that little bit of extra coating off of there. And you see where the roots meet the bulb. You just trim that off to expose the bottom part of the bulb. And there's some red that runs up through here. And it makes a little flap. And all you have to do is take that little flap off and expose the rest of that bulb. If you have bugs or anything, they kind of like to burrow down in that top layer right where the red meets. So you want to get that red off of there to get any worms or bugs that you might have brought back from the woods with you off of there. So that is your cleaned ramp, and the next step after this will just be washing. Okay, with washing the ramps, of course, first we got to plug the sink, and I like to salt each sink each time. Get the ramps in there and fill up each sink. Then I like to wash the ramps, dredge them real good, and I like to do them one by one. During this wash is the most important time to get clean as much as you can. You wash the ramp to remove as much dirt from both the bulb and the leaves as possible. This is your main one, and this is what you're normally left with after you finish cleaning the first round of ramps. As you can see, the water is very dirty, but the ramps are getting very clean. But I like to do this process 2 more times, and I will show you, and it is the same exact process, only I don't wash each ramp this time. I just dredge them and take them out in bundles to try to rinse off the excess dirt that's caught in between the leaves mostly. And after your second rinse, doing them in bundles, your sink should look just about like this once you've cleaned it up. So you see we need 1 more rinse to make this water run as clean as we want it to get the ramps canned. So this is the last round that we do with both the salt and the water, and I like to do them in bundles, wash and rinse them as much as I can, and take them back out. And this is what your water looks like, and now we're ready to can. So we get a big stock pot and we begin to fill it up. I use cold water for this just because that's what my mom always used, and I like to fill it up almost all the way, but leaving a little bit of headroom, as you can see, because these ramps will wilt down. My mom called this process the blanching process, and once we get it started, it takes about an hour. So we light up the fire and we get this process rolling. Once you have the pot to where you want it, you cover it up, and now it's time to fill up our pressure cooker, clean our jars, get them into the pressure cooker to boil them. Preparing them for the pressure cooker is mighty easy. You just wash them like you would any other dish with soap and water. And then do the same thing with the lid rings. Next, you just fill the jars up to where the lid ring meets and turn it on high heat and wait for them to boil. While this process is happening, you just want to stir your ramps a little bit. You're wanting them to cook up real good and wilt down. You can see here that these ramps are nowhere near ready because they're not wilted down at all, and they're maintaining their bright green color. What we're looking for is a dark green color, and you'll be able to pick up the ramp and it fold back in on itself. So we cover them back up and we wait. About 25 minutes in, we can see that these ramps are starting to wilt down a little bit more. However, they are still not a dark green color, but you can see where the green is transferring into the water and becoming darker. So we just want to submerge these ramps as much as we can and keep turning them about every 10 to 15 minutes. And we keep this process going for around an hour until we meet that dark green color that we're looking for. Back to the process of sterilizing our jars. Once they begin to boil, we set our timer for 15 minutes, and this will sterilize them up to about 6,000 feet above sea level. Once our jars have nearly sterilized, you can see the difference in the way that the ramps have cooked. You can see that dark green that I was talking about, and you can see how the water changed to a greenish brown looking color. When you pick the ramp up to check how it's welded, you can see that it folds in on itself, and this is when the ramp is ready to go into the jars. So now that our jars have been sterilized and they've boiled for 15 minutes, it's time to get them out and dump the water out of each one individually and set them over to the side to dry. I like to keep the stock pot going the entire time during this process. And then what I like to do is I like to come in with a spaghetti fork and begin to fill each one of the jars. These jars do get really hot, and while you're holding them it can burn your hands. Now what I like to use here is some cotton gloves underneath of some nitrile gloves, the same way that I do whenever I'm doing some barbecue, like a brisket or something like that. That maintains a good heat barrier in between your hand and the hot items that you're using. So I suggest doing that if you can. I find that this technique works way better than a pot holder or an oven mitt because it gives you more control over the jar. If you haven't listened to anything else that I've said so far, this is the most important thing about canning ramps right here. You want to tamp the ramps down in really tight. You want to keep them good and compact, and you want to make sure that you're getting all the air bubbles out, because if you don't, you stand a chance of your jar exploding or your lids bending and popping up. You have to get all the gases out of the ramps. You want to fill the ramps up close to the bottom of the ring. You want to keep about an inch of head space from the top of the jar to the ramps. This allows space for the ramp juice and the salt that you're going to be putting on the top. Once your jars are stuffed, it should look pretty much just like this, leaving that inch of head space. After you've got your ramps filled up to where you want them, then I like to take a ladle full of the ramp juice out and fill it right up to the bottom of the glass ring that you see right there. Once you've got all your ramps out, your stock pot looks like this. Now don't waste this juice. You can use it in your compost, or you can make a ramp stock out of it. Now that we have all of our jars filled up, we'll go ahead and we'll move the ramps around to even up the jars and ladle over the juice to fill them up to the bottom of the glass ring. Next, I use just regular old iodized salt and put a teaspoon of salt into each quart, and you would use a half a teaspoon in a pint if you're using them. Next, we just take a paper towel or a cloth and wipe off all the edges to make sure there's no moisture or salt to get trapped in between the lid and the jar. That way the jars seal up real nice. After any debris has been cleared from the top of the jar, we place the lids, and then we start putting our rings onto the jar, and we want to put them on finger tight. Now what I mean by finger tight is just like this. You tighten the jar as much as you can with your fingers, and then just give it a little bump at the end. See, just like that. During this entire process, we've kept our pressure cooker boiling, so now it's time to start adding the jars into it. This is not the original process I was taught to use. I was originally taught to boil them for 2.5 hours in a regular water bath canner, but I do not suggest to do that because of fear of botulism. What you want to see is the steam in your pressure cooker start coming out like this, and then you set the timer for 10 minutes. After your 10 minutes has concluded with the steam pouring out of the top, just like this, you can add your 10-pound weight to the top. Next, you just wait for the 10-pound weight to start jiggling just like this. Once your weight is jiggling like that, you want to set your timer for 40 minutes. And then you just sit back and wait for your 40 minutes to be done. After your 40 minutes has concluded, all you got to do is turn the heat off and then move the pressure canner over to the side off of the heated burner and wait for the pressure canner to depressurize on its own. You do not want to let any of the pressure off by removing the weight or pressing down on the pressure release valve, because that will depressurize your pressure canner way too quickly and risk blowing up your jars or otherwise. You want to wait for this little pressure valve to drop down just like this. Once your pressure canner has completely depressurized, you may remove the weight from the top and open up the canner to remove your jars. And then all that's left is to sit back and enjoy all that hard work you just put in, because look at those beautiful canned ramps. So thanks for watching West Virginia Smoking, Grilling, and Outdoors today. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment if you have anything to say, and share it on any social media outlet you desire. Until next time, we'll see you.